Welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and this podcast, it exists for you. Whether you're a music lover, an educator, a choir member, each week we bring guests to the show to help explore what matters in music. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and in this episode, you're not just getting one guest, you're getting four. That's right, it is time for the most amazing panel I've ever seen on a podcast. Yes, I am saying seen because there are a lot of facial expressions that you're going to catch if you watch this one on YouTube. You can check it out at my YouTube page, Emily Williams Birch YouTube page. Anyway, this episode is incredible. We pulled together, thanks to an idea from a guest you've heard before, Miss Christina Vihar, we pulled together a panel and put together a bunch of scenarios. Originally, it was designed for my intro to music ed class and my elementary and secondary method students. Questions like, what do you do on the first day? Or what do you do when there's a behavior problem in the classroom? Or what do you do when a student comes out to you? Or what do you do with pronouns? We posed these questions to my students and the answers were interesting. So I wanted to bring the panel who created the questions together so you too can start getting your creative juices flowing before we kick off our next season or school year ahead. On the panel today, there are four dynamite educators, and you need to pause and look in the episode notes and make sure you are following them on social media because their content is so important to what we're doing. You have Maria A. Ellis, Jasmine Fripp, Dr. Chantae Pittman, and Kanisha Howard. I cannot wait for you to hear this part 1 episode. You'll catch part 2 next week, but I'm so thankful for the Kennison Choral Company of being a sponsor for this podcast and making panels like these and conversations like these possible. Be prepared. We dive right in, we go deep, and we have hard conversations to get you thinking. But above all, listen with an open mind. Some of the things the ladies say, be fluid, be flexible, and ask. Above all, make sure that you're having fun and that you're leading with love and your students are centric and seen. I'm honored to be bringing you this panel. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoy the show. Today, on the Music Ed Matters podcast, we have a dynamite panel ahead of you. This is episode 61, and we're going to be answering questions from scenarios designed by four of my favorite people. We have Maria A. Ellis, Jasmine Fripp, Kanisha Howard, and Dr. Chantae Pittman. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Oh, I hope you're watching this on YouTube because all y'all just did the same thing with the shaky hands. That is awesome. Thank you all for being here. This panel is coming to us as an idea from Miss Christina Vihar. Miss Vihar came and spoke to my methods classes this past semester, and she reached out to y'all first and brought all these scenarios to class. And as the professor of a methods class, that lesson was a pivot in my students' thought process. When they started to hear questions that weren't posed from themselves or from me, but from a series of lived experiences. So let's open up our panel and let the listeners know who is sitting with us today. Who wants to go first with introductions?
I'll go.
Okay, go, Kanisha.
So I'm Kanisha Howard. I have been teaching for this was the fifth year, and the end of my 4th year in elementary school music. And listen, that's my story for now. It's still being written.
I love it. You are still writing it. And Kanisha is lovely, has come in and spoken to my students as well. And the questions and the stories they wrote in their journals after you talked to them, amazing. So thank you for being here, Miss Howard. Who's next? Let's go, Maria A. Ellis.
Why did I know you was going to pick me? I was trying to let Chantae and Jasmine go first, but I am Maria A. Ellis. I run a company called Conductor that provides diverse music education resources, as well as it champions female conductors, as well as teachers who are creatives and helping them start their businesses and run their creative life and make them coins. I am from St. Louis, Missouri. I conduct a elementary ensemble for the St. Louis Children's Choirs, as well as conducting a high school ensemble for the Sheldon. I also host a radio show called Bach and Beyonce, where we talk about classical music as well as other types of music and how all of those things are all intertwined. So that is me in a nutshell.
I love you, Maria. This is your third time recording a podcast episode with me, so thank you for coming back 3 times. That means you aren't hating it. That's a great sign.
I love you, so I'll always come back for you. I
also love you. Dr. Pittman, this is your second time chatting. I'm so excited. Would you go ahead and do your introduction?
Absolutely. It's so great to be back. Again, Dr. Chantae Pittman. I'm the choral director at Campbell High School in Smyrna, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta, Georgia. This is going into my 12th year of choral music education. And I'm also a music consultant with TheeDocP Consults. Fun. Anywho, so above, teaching and things of that nature, I do music consulting with different school districts and also independent, schools, universities, things of that nature, fun stuff. Just want to make everybody better. So yeah, that's me.
I love it. Thank you for coming back and sharing. Now, Miss Jasmine Fripp, I am very excited because this is our first time chatting, but you're coming back in a few weeks to be one of our speakers at the Music Ed Matters Teacher PD Weekend. So introduce the listeners. Who is Miss Jasmine Fripp?
I am Miss Jasmine Fripp. I am a director of choral activities within the KIPP Nashville Network. I also teach a culturally responsive general music curriculum that I've created for myself. And last but not least, I am known as the Passionate Black Educator. That's my company and my brand. The purpose of the Passionate Black Educator is to work with teachers to become more effective teachers within the classroom and to work with music teachers to create diverse curriculums, anti-racist curriculums, create solidarity within their classroom, and dismantle white supremacy. I also work to provide opportunities for Black, Brown, Indigenous, and Asian students through my brand as well.
I love these brands. I want to make sure I got all of them. Kanisha Howard, what's your handle on Insta? What's your brand?
The Connected Black Educator.
The Connected Black Educator. And Jasmine, yours is?
The Passionate Black Educator.
The Passionate Black Educator. And Dr. Pittman?
I'm TheeDocP.
TheeDocP. And Maria A. Ellis?
Girl Conductor.
Girl Conductor. Oh,
we're like the Avengers of the music education.
I was just about to say, y'all, let's get shirts, have all the names on it, and be like, Choir Avengers.
But actually, as a collective, we're known as Sisters with Degrees. So
really, Sisters with Degree. I am honored.
SWD, not SWV.
I see that. Oh my God, I love this. This is so much fun. Well, we're gonna kick off our panel, and this panel is, what would you do? So we're talking situations in the classroom, and as you can hear, everyone has different backgrounds and different experiences in and out of the classroom. So I will pose a question as your moderator. The first question comes to us from Miss Vihar, who couldn't be here today, but she has a question, and then you guys get to go however you want chatting about it. A student has asked to be called by their personal pronouns and name in class, but the student's parents say they do not use those pronouns or that name. What do you do?
That's a great question. So I can give you a scenario. I have a student when I was student teaching who chose different pronouns. And when I met the student with their current pronouns, not the pronouns that they were born with. And that's what I called the student while they were in my class. Well, it just so happened that I had to call home for their student because we had nothing bad, just we had a field trip and just wanted to make sure that their kids got where they needed to be. And I called the student by their pronouns that they told me to call them by. And the parents said, oh, that person is not here. If you're looking for this person by their original pronouns or whatnot, they was like, that person is here, but the person that you're calling is not here. And I was like, what do I do? But to me, when the student is in my presence, I'm going to honor the name that you asked me to call you. If I need to call home and you've told me my parents don't address me by that, then I will call you by that name to keep the peace in your home. I'll call your parents and address you by that name, but when you're in my presence, I'll address you by what you asked me to.
I like that. Very clear and concise, honoring the student's request, but being aware of family dynamics. Anyone else want to add?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much the same as me. There's actually a little worksheet going around, like New Year things where they ask your pronouns and stuff of that nature. And it asks very specific questions like, okay, so what's your name? What pronouns do you go by? Do you go by these pronouns in public, or can I use these pronouns in public with you? And I thought that was so smart. It kind of helps if you have more than one student with that circumstance. But nowadays the kids are, very open about it in some circumstances. But just like Maria, I'm going to call you what you want me to call you. And this doesn't just go for trans students. Like there are some kids who don't like their names in general. And so, I'm like, so what do you want to be called? So, just respecting and honoring, the person that you have there. So that's very important.
I love this. All these things help to build culture. Hit it, Jasmine.
Piggybacking off of Chantae, getting that survey out at the beginning of the year is super helpful. It just goes ahead and nips everything in the bud. Before we get into the thick of it. But things do change. People become more comfortable in who they are. So don't be surprised if smack dab in the middle of the year, such and such decides to go by a different pronoun. It is now your job to respect what that person would like to be called, or what name they would like to go by, what pronoun they would like to go by. And you're not going to get it perfect every single time. But if you're someone who's authentically trying and you're not being disrespectful, and there's some other posts floating around Facebook as well that'll help you practice these pronouns. It basically gives you exercises to practice these pronouns and how to get them from memory and how to respond if you mess them up. So basically repeating that pronoun or using it 3 different times in 3 different sentences, or simply, oh, my apologies, switching to their preferred pronoun, not preferred, their pronoun, and then going forth with the conversation instead of sulking in the moment with that pronoun. There's different ways around it, but just be prepared to be fluid, even if the person doesn't give you their pronoun at the beginning of the year, and just be respectful throughout the entire process.
I agree with what everyone has said, and I'm coming from, elementary school. A lot of people think that these things don't happen at that age, but they do. And, and it will be in your classroom, and just like them. For people that are coming out, I like to say the one thing that I don't think that I really understood when I came out of college was I knew that I was going to be the authority in my classroom, but I didn't think of myself as the person to be able to set the rules and the tone for my classroom. So when I figured that out, I wanted to be a safe space, a place where we can be honest and where I can say, I may not get this right, because I've had a couple, maybe 3 students since I've been teaching with different pronouns. And to be able to say to my classroom, I may not get this right, we may not get this right all the time, but as long as I'm graceful to you, you're graceful to me, we're going to make it together. To be able to make them feel comfortable, because when they're in your presence, they're in your presence. And Maria was saying, if I need to call you by some other pronoun, to keep the peace in your home, because I know that that's what you're protecting, then I will do so.
I love that you guys all reference flexibility, fluidity, getting to know the student first, and then being willing to make the mistake, admit it, and move on. It's about how you react to that mistake that is really important here. So great answers. Jasmine, you ready for the next question to pose to the panel?
I do. I am. So when it comes to other students in your classroom who may not hold that belief that you have in regards to respecting people's gender identities or even sexual preferences, how do you all handle that? So let's say somebody who was born a girl decides that she now wants to be referred to as he, changes her name or changes his name. How do you all handle that with your students?
I've actually had this situation happen. I had a student like that. They're going to be a senior this year, but they moved away. So they came in new anyway. So they came in after the start of the school year. So it was already hey, it's a new student. So, we go through all the new student things and they get to introduce themselves. And of course, when they introduced themselves and they said their name, everyone was like, oh, okay. Well, my school is pretty diverse. We're pretty much liberal, with all of the students that we have at the school. But of course, there were questions. And so all the students would aim their questions at me. And of course, we would talk in my office. And I was like, well, we're figuring it out. This particular student was female to male and beautiful soprano voice. So I was going through racking my mind about, oh my gosh, how am I going to healthily, make sure that they're comfortable, especially because the student hadn't started, taking testosterone. And so it's made me start thinking about making sure that I'm not saying, okay, girls in the soprano section, or okay, guys in the tenors and baritones. It made me be very, very aware of making sure I was leaving gender out of my sections. And so having that student made me do a lot of research. And there are several books that have came out about working with transgender students that has really been helpful and making sure that I keep things a safe space. And my students are very respectful. And hopefully when broaching these issues, meaning they're not being like blatantly just antagonistic, but curious more so than anything. But they will always make sure that it was aimed at me within the privacy of my office and not just like, but that's not so I haven't had any negative experiences, but luckily that's been my experience. But what about you guys?
So I had a student who, same student I was just talking to you about earlier, some type of way there was some discussion and another student called that student a girl, and that student is transitioned to be a male. And so I called the student into my office, the one who called the other student a girl. I called that student into my office and I said, first of all, I know you said it to be mean. Like, I know that you didn't forget, you were actually trying to be mean. And I said, it's difficult enough for people who are transitioning. That's difficult. My one student was suicidal. And the student was like, Miss E, if I hadn't talked to you, like I probably would have taken my life. And I'm like, so we already in a fragile state anyway. And so I was telling my student, I said, what if that was you? And let's take gender out of it. But what if you, since this student was a percussionist, what if somebody constantly ragged on you about being a girl that played drums? And how would that make you feel? And I said, and even if you don't agree with this student's direction, as a choir, we're a family. And I preach that in my choir. We are a family, and I do not tolerate family fighting each other. I don't tolerate that at all. And I just explained that lots of things happen in people's lives that you may or may not agree with. If you put peanut butter on your fish sandwich, I'm not going to agree with that. because I don't eat that. I don't even eat fish. But if that's what you do, that's what you do. And I may not agree with it, but go live your life. But it's not our responsibility to put our own personal judgments and beliefs on other people. Let those people live their lives and you go live your life. And then we all work together in love. So that's how I handled the situation in my choir. We talked about it and the student apologized and we didn't have that issue again, but we just not finna just out here being mean to people. We're not finna do that.
I love that you're teaching a life skill. Sorry, Jasmine. I love that you're teaching that life skill through it. Go for it.
I was just going to point out something else in her response. The fact that you, instead of getting on the individual in front of the class, you pull them in private to speak with them. That's major. And I don't think a lot of music educators realize that you got to know your students. Like sometimes a lightning quick is what's necessary, but then sometimes you got to take that person in private and have that conversation with them because you just don't know how they will respond or how you can possibly like interfere with their attitude, how you can possibly have a negative effect on their attitude because of the way you come at them. So I just wanted to make sure that was pointed out.
And a lot of times that happens, they're mean because something happened to them. So they're just perpetuating the cycle. And a lot of times when I pull kids into my office, we get to the root of why it's happening, and then they talk about what's going on in their life. And I'm just like, okay, well, there we go. So
there are tools here. Kanisha, hit it.
Yes. So again, this is one of those. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I was kind of hit, just experiencing it. But I had a student who was with the family that was okay with her transitioning. Transitioning, and the kids were sort of confused when he first got there, and no one was mean at first about everything until, of course, the student, he started to be, just sort of a little vocal about it if students asked him. And the younger grades, it was really only maybe two classes in my 5th grade group that year that, kind of turned to the whole mean thing. And they know I'm not having that. And so luckily their teachers were on board, and it had gotten to a point where, it was like, okay, it has come to our attention that some very mean things are going on, and you think that you can still have all of these great activities that are happening, at the same time. So we started to have to sort of snatch some things, but we replaced it with moments of social emotional learning, more of that. There's a lot of that at our school. And so until you know how to be nice, if I keep getting news of this is what we keep doing. You like computer? Oh, she's going to do this lesson with you now instead of what you want to do. Because on the playground, this is what has been happening. And so it does happen. And that's how we handled it. And again, it wasn't a lot because they're just coming to know that, oh, I have an opinion. And, they're learning sort of how to form that. And I was grateful to the teachers for being on board and kind of counteracting that with, let's learn some more about, some things that you're developing that you don't understand so that you don't develop them in the wrong way.
So you guys are giving us so many of these tools. Like that was collaborating and working with the other teachers in the school and the administration in a positive way, and to teach the whole child and to get to know those people and to do it in a small setting. These are great. Do you want me to ask another question, or does anyone have one they want to pose to the panel?
I was going to add one more thing. So
go for it.
Maria also brought up the family aspect. Y'all, the family aspect within any music ensemble is not only good for like creating that great sound, because if you trust the person next to you, you sound better. But if you create that family environment from Jump Street, it opens up more opportunity for solidarity. Like at the end of the day, you're not going to do or say something that can hurt your family member. Whether you agree with who they are or not, you're way more open to that perspective. And you also build advocacy through family. And I can remember one specific incident where I had a student who came out to me. It completely blindsided me. Keep in mind that I work in predominantly Black and Brown populations by choice. Like, I always interview for jobs where there's a predominantly Black and Brown population. In this particular instance, I work with all Black kids. This male student came to my office. He said, Miss Murray at the time, I have something to tell you. I said, okay, what's up? And he says, I'm bi. And I just looked at him and I said, oh, okay. He was like, that's it? I was like, tell me this. You still can sing, right? Yeah. You still talented? Yeah. You still have a great personality? Yeah, I think so. I was like, all right, we good. Like, who you love, that has not changed any of that. And he said, oh, okay. And I asked him, how do you feel? And he said, I think I want to tell my choir family. And I was like, all right, let's go. So we were about to start rehearsal anyways. And I said, before we get started, such and such has something to say. And such said, I'm bi. And he was a tenor. So the tenors all looked at each other and they stood up and they gave him a group hug. And for not only guys, but for Black boys to see somebody who loves differently from them and still be accepting of it and say, you know what, we love you regardless, you're still our brother, blah, blah, blah. Like that meant everything to me. And that showed that I had that sense of family built in from Jump Street. So when you build that sense of family, it's like you cannot just be a teacher in the classroom. At times you're going to be a teacher. At times you're going to be a guidance counselor. At times you're going to be a therapist. At times you're just going to be a listening ear. At times you're going to play mom. Times you're going to be going to a bunch of different sporting events that you probably never thought you would even go to. But you cannot just go in a music classroom and teach. You have to build that solidarity within your classroom, because you also have to keep in mind, a lot of times when people join choir, this is where they fit in. They're not jocks. They're not thespians. They're not the cheerleaders. Like, music is where they belong. This is their family. This is where they find a sense of purpose. And you're supposed to like make sure everybody within your four walls, and then even the people who want to come into that family, understand that we're a unit, we're a family, and this is where solidarity will be mandatory.
I love that. Taking the time to really get to know your students, that's something you have to be intentional about. Dr. Pittman said that in our episode together, that you have to intentionally reflect internally. And I think this is all tying in so nicely. Hey, go for it, Ms. Fripp.
One more thing. There's also professional development. There are people out there who like take their time and give workshops. I want to say Nicholas Prozzini, I pray I'm pronouncing their name right. They host professional developments along with, I cannot pronounce this person's first name, but it's AER Queen. I've seen them on Facebook. They're an abundance of resource. And who else? Eric Williamson. They are like fabulous with working with the LGBTQ plus community. They provide professional developments. They have videos on their page. And you can also join Facebook groups like mine, Solidarity Heroes. And we talk about tough questions like this. And it's a safe space for you to learn and grow as a music educator. So definitely use your resources. They are there.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure all of those things that you've said are linked in the episode notes. And if you guys help me, maybe we can get Eric on the show, because I know that we are also friends. He would be a great one to have. Now,
we'll definitely do it.
Oh, he'd be so much fun. That'd be fun. All right, Dr. Pittman, what is your question for the panel?
All right. So, ladies, what would you advise a teacher to do if they are not of the same culture as the students they teach? Or say this is a white teacher and they get hired in a predominantly Black, Brown, Indigenous space. What are your suggestions for this teacher to get prepared?
Oh, I could. I had a friend who
I hope
was
someone's watching the YouTube, because all y'all did the same. Like, all y'all had faces when she asked that question, and I'm like, let me get my pen and paper. But y'all better be watching the YouTube, because every one of you made the most beautiful faces of like, I have so many words to say. Watch out. All right, sorry, Maria A. Ellis, go.
No, so I had a friend who was white who was getting ready to go into a predominantly Black school. And I told her, I said, look, do not go into that classroom trying to be Mary Poppins. They are going to eat you alive. Don't do it. This is not sugar and spice and everything nice. This is not what this is. I said, I need you to go in there. Well, not to say that she wouldn't be genuine, but go in there and genuinely get to know the kids. Like, take time and watch what they do, learn the culture of that school. I see so many teachers who don't learn the culture of the school. So they come in and I've seen it because I'm from a Black school, and okay, and we're going to sing Mozart. No, we're not. We're not going to sing Mozart. No, that's not the culture of the school. So learn the culture, watch what they're doing, look at the previous concerts, if that's a thing, look at what they've done in the past and learn from that, and then get to know the students individually. I do a game with my students on the first day of school called Tell Me Something Good. It's one of my favorite get to know you games. Simple goes, tell me something good, clap. And they have to tell me their name. They have to tell me something about them, like your age or whatever I ask. And then they also have to tell me their favorite song. And then you always get the kid that's like, I don't have a favorite song. Well, what are you listening to? Tell me something about music. Tell me something. I do that for a few reasons. Number one, because I need to learn everybody's name. And it's the challenge for me that by the end of the class, I can call everybody by their name. And the way I do that, so don't share this with your students because they'll give it up. The way I do that is throughout the class, I keep going back to those kids and saying, okay, guys, now who is this? Okay, that's Jasmine. And who is this? That's Chantae. And who is this? That's Kanisha. Then we can do it again. And then Emily, you'll introduce yourself. And I say, okay, now what's her name? That's Emily. And who is that? Well, that's Chantae. And I keep going around until I have everybody's name. So now I know everybody's name, number one. Number two, when I find out what kind of music you like, I can put that into my class. That becomes part of my warm-up. That's part of when we come into class and you just need some groovy music, I'm picking your pieces because that shows you that I was listening to you. And even if you pick somebody like that doesn't necessarily have clean music, I'm gonna find a clean part that I can play during class and I'm gonna use that. And then I'm going to get to know you as a Black teacher who went into an all-white school. It was difficult for one of the classes to connect with me because they felt that I didn't know them. And they was like, well, she don't even know our names. Well, I knew all the names, knew everybody's name. But because I wasn't what they were used to, I had to adjust to their community. And then once we built a relationship, then I was able to take them where I needed to go. But I had to make adjustments being a Black teacher in a white school with one of my choirs. So I think learning the community is huge. It's so huge. And not going in there thinking that because these kids look one way, that they're going to act a certain way. The way I see it, it'd be the same problems. It's just different skin. My daddy not at home. In this community, he not at home because he don't live here. In this community, he not at home because he at work all day long. The daddy is not at home. This community, it may be weed. This community, they eat Tide Pods. You know what I'm saying? It just depends on, or opioids or whatever it is, whatever you eat. I don't know. Kids was eating Tide Pods for a second, but it's the same problem. it's just different skin. And so understanding that will help you get with that community and help make that transition smooth. You don't have to go in and be somebody else. I don't go into a white school and saying, good evening, my name is Maria, and I'm going to be your teacher today, and everything is going to be peachy keen because I talk like this. Absolutely not, because I don't talk like that in general. I go in there being authentic to who I am, and things I don't understand, and I tell the kids, I don't understand. Can you help me? And then that builds community. So I don't want to keep talking, but I want one more example for this question. This particular class, after they told, so I was student teaching, and they told the whole teacher, they were like, she don't even know us. I was, okay, cool. So I did a meeting with them, and I was like, okay, I want to learn about every last one of you all. And we did it for one class period. And I had people who was triplets that I didn't know, and I had kids who were mixed, and I had kids who, they sing, and then they had a sibling in another choir, but I didn't know they was related because they had two different daddies and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, there's a lot going on. But that after that class, after they felt that I'd really got to know them, the whole relationship of that class changed. The sound of the group changed because they trusted me. So it's more than just coming in and just in skin tones. When they feel like there's a connection, they sing differently for you. They work harder for you. They knew that failure was no longer an option. Whereas we may have played when we first came with Miss E because we don't really know her. No, we don't play with her. We get to work because we want to, because we know that she loves us in return. Okay, that's it.
No, there's so many little tools from that. Authenticity, taking the time to get to know them, building that community because it changes the sound, that time, and don't be Mary Poppins.
Please don't be Mary Poppins, y'all. And for my Black listeners, my brown listeners, my Indigenous Asian folk, just because you skin folk don't automatically make you kin folk to them kids. Like, just because you look like them don't mean you automatically have a way, your foot isn't a, listen, I learned that the hard way. And when I say it was my second group of kids, it was my fourth year teaching my second group of kids. And I was like, okay, I worked with Black kids before. They got it. I went to that second school. And when I say they handed my hind parts on a silver platter, because the culture built at my old school was completely different from the culture that I was like, just because every Black experience is a Black experience, even if it's a different Black experience, your Black experiences are going to be different. You can't go in there thinking just because you look like those kids that you automatically have your way in the door. Some other things I would like to add. Your first two things, as this goes for any teacher, in all honesty. You need to build relationships and you need to build joy within your classroom. If your kids aren't having fun, before we could read music, before there was music theory, before there was oral skills and listening to major, minor, diminished, all that good stuff, there was joy in music. You got joy out of singing Mary Had a Little Lamb. You got joy out of singing Baby Shark Doo. You got joy before all of that. So keep joy and building relationships at the center of it all. Decenter yourself. Decenter yourself. Your classroom should be student-led. They should be leading the conversations. They should be leading, they even if it stretches at the beginning of your class, even if it's like a rhythmic warm-up, find some way for your students to lead and decenter your voice. The reason why it's so important as any educator, specifically white educators, to decenter themselves is because a lot of times, especially within music education, the narrative is white and Eurocentric. If you're listening to your kids, you gain cultural perspective and they learn from each other. Decolonize both your syllabus and your curriculum. Decolonize it. That whole, hey, your hair must be of a natural color. That whole, hey, we're going to go on this trip and you need umpteen dollars by the end of this period of time, but you're not offering any fundraisers to make sure that your babies are able to go on said trip. You got to go through with a fine comb and like decolonize your curriculum and your syllabus. All of this Western art music, y'all, you can learn just as much, probably even more, from cultural music and Black music. You can still sight read with cultural music. You can still train by ear, get good ear training through cultural and Black music. And when it comes to music, you hear it before you read it. You sight reading is just one tool within your toolbox. Why are you relying on that one tool? Like, make sure you're putting all types of music into your syllabus and your curriculum. And last but not least, or actually second to last thing, if it's not equitable, your kids don't need to be a part of it. And I'm talking about my Black, Brown, Indigenous, Asian kids. I love NAFME, I love ACDA, and I love the fact that they've been really buckling down and making sure that they're diverse choirs going up and presenting. I love that they're taking action and like doing all type of audits and whatnot. But truth be told, on a national level, things are changing, but chapters locally, they need work. And some of these situations are not equitable. I'll tell you, I had one particular group that I took to try out for Mid-State. This group had not had a serious choir program like 5 years, since I had gotten there. And it was a struggle to try to get them to read music. Then on top of that, learn the music. Then on top of that, the organization, like all of their events were like 45 minutes away because everybody had to judge, including myself. I couldn't provide a ride for them. I couldn't be there for their mental support, emotional support. Their parents had to take off of work to get them to said event. It was on a weekend as opposed to a school day. Then on top of that, it was during like one of the biggest events in the city. So that means on top of the natural 45 minutes away, 45 minutes time of length, it is going to take them an extra 15 to 20 minutes. So it's over an hour to get to said event. Then on top of that, if they did get in the choir, they're rarely going to see kids that look like them or conductors or clinicians who look like them. It was a very inequitable situation. So what did I do? I said, okay, my kids did not flourish in this incident. They did not, it was very inequitable, and I'm not going to put my kids through that again. I said no more NAFME events for the rest of the year. But guess what? They found success elsewhere. They were able to perform for the school board. They were able to perform for the mayor. They were able to go out of town and perform at Dollywood. They were able to do an impromptu performance for the cast of Soul of Motown in Pigeon Forge. But you can find success you can create your own success. It doesn't always have to be through NAFME and ACDA. And over time, you will build your program to where they can participate in these things. And hopefully the local chapters will do better. But for the most part, like if it's not an equitable situation, do not put your kids through that, because all you're doing is putting them through way more trauma, way more stress than they already need to go through. And then last but not least, just be yourself. Do not go in there with a white savior complex. Do not try to be like, what's up, kid? No, just be your authentic self. One thing about these kids, they can sniff fake from a mile away. So just go in there and just be your God-given, beautiful self. Okay, I'm done.
Can I piggyback on that white savior complex? Because I want to say something about that while you was talking. As a student who came from a Black school that would be considered Title I, when the white teachers would come in, we would already be looking like, why are you here? Like, are you really here to help us? Or are you here to save us? Like, what is your real purpose for being here? And I think teachers, you have to be aware of that if you're white coming to an all Black school, and I'm not saying that this is the experience at all schools, but there are some kids who will look at you like, why are you here? So being authentic and being who you are and being willing to learn will help you. Well, number one, it'll make your life easier, number one. But it'll also like just help you to establish those relationships with those students. Nobody wants to be seen. Nobody wants to feel like a charity case. Nobody wants to feel like that. And our students for our students sometimes get that feeling from us. I'm doing you a favor by coming to teach you music. No, but you're not. Music is my life. I want to teach you music. It's what I do. It's the essence of me being Maria. I want you to enjoy this subject that I'm so passionate about, that I love so much. And that's authentic. That's real. They can feel that. And if that's not really you, then you may want to find that one thing that you are passionate about, and you probably should go work in that field. But not being genuine, that's not going to help you. And that's going to frustrate you and those students. So.
And another thing, sorry, I thought you were about to finish. My bad. Another thing, it really, like at first I thought it was like, oh, okay, well, here's how you do this. Y'all, if the first thing that comes to mind when you're working with Black students or you're preparing for Black History Month, and we'll talk more in detail about this, Doc, if your first thing that comes to mind is, how do I perform Negro spiritual? Why are you going straight to the Negro spirituals? That is the one genre of music that comes out of Black folks' oppression. Y'all, we are more than our oppressed selves. When I say joy before anything, I mean that we have so much more music to offer. Why are you going straight for the oppression catalog? Like, why? Make it make sense. And then last but not least, if you don't know, bring in people. There are people out here like Maria, like Doc Pittman, like Kanisha, like myself, who are more than willing to work with your ensembles, especially when it comes to gospel music, when it comes to blues, when it comes to R&B, when it comes to country, because country is a Black form of music. Like there are people out there who are willing to come and assist you. Even myself as a Black woman, I've had to bring in people into my classroom. I don't know everything there is to know about Black music or cultural music. I wanted to highlight Asian culture. I brought in Dorita Seth. He's amazing. He is amazing. So really decenter yourself, and your kids are not going to look at you like, oh, she don't know what she's doing. That's why she brought in some other people. No, this is an opportunity for both you and your students to learn, and it'll break up the monotony. Not saying that y'all class is boring or whatever, but it'll break up your regularly scheduled program and offer something exciting for your kids to look forward to. So don't be afraid to lean on these voices. And also, like, it's a delicate balance between, don't be afraid to reach out to people, but at the same time, like, make sure those people are okay with you using them as their diversity and equity solution, because some people, that's not what they're there for. But some people like myself, like the ladies on this panel, we have no problem with it. So just be mindful of that.
I want to pause because we're going to turn this into 2 episodes because I feel like we have too many questions to ask. You guys are leaving us with so many tips. Be authentic. Do your research. Don't be scared. Don't take anything for granted. Get to know your people. There is no white savioring. I think I just verbized that. And every single lived experience is different. So be ready to be flexible and to be fluid. I'm going to push pause, and if you are listening, you're going to have to tune in next week for part 2 of our panel. This panel is so good, and these conversations are so deep and important for us to be having and thinking about. We're going to pause, and you'll get part 2 in this episode next week, so make sure you tune back in. There is going to be so many great questions coming your way. I'm not going to spoil any of them. But in case you were wondering, you, my friend, you matter. We all know that music matters. And I'll see you next time for your second installment of What Would You Do panel on the Music Ed Matters podcast.